My name's Poppy Whatmore, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. I live in London as a full-time artist. I previously studied architecture, so I learned how to think in 3 dimensions, which made the transition into sculpture feel natural and appropriate. I've since exhibited internationally and extensively nationally since I graduated, and I have major collections. In relation to how I came to art and to be an artist, my mother is an artist, so I've always loved drawing as a child, and I felt a vocation to be an artist as a teenager. I went to an academic school, so you were expected to go into profession, so I chose architecture. But as an adult, my calling as an artist was still strong. So I trained as an artist as a mature student, and I've committed to this career ever since. I found my voice and my artistic language at a BA at Camberwell, and at this point I was able to explore materials and then techniques that enabled me to articulate a body of work that really meant something to me. My artistic practice is mainly sculpture, and the materials that I use include concrete, wood, steel, expanding foam, fixings, and often I use a lot of DIY materials. In my work, I like to convey and address struggles of our lived experience. I'm particularly interested in the potential of language as a reflective means to address how we experience the everyday. And art for me makes it possible to perhaps propose new worlds and forms of resistance in response to what we experience every day and beyond, particularly from the past as well. For me, I experience this as we do experience objects on a daily basis. An object perhaps. So I'm particularly connected with objects and memories. I talk about sometimes weight as a consistent theme in my work, and as you can see, a lot of the materials are heavy, for instance concrete, and they give a density to the work. Or, in opposition, the work's arranged in a fragile, precarious state. So I use the idea of weight to imply different psychological states, from the heavy, more burdensome state of existence to a more treacherous, and fragile experience in the lightness or the potential breakage of materials as they're arranged, so that the weight of materials, heavy, light, can convey different emotive states for the viewer. In relation to my process, I normally start with an idea, and then I either draw a quick sketch, or I make a small model so I don't forget my idea. Or sometimes I can have something very, very visual and definite in my mind that I'd like to articulate externally. And at this point, I'll experiment with materials and forms and start to create something life-size. Sometimes I even know the materials that I'd like to use from the beginning too. Some works from the ideas stage aren't fully realised, and I really like to explore materials as I'm going along, and through that method I learn and the ideas are translated. There is a failure rate to my work, so sometimes things aren't fully realised, but what I learn in certain methods will translate into another work, and I really like to push the materials to their absolute limit. So this means taking certain risks with the performance of the material. When thinking about my studio practice and when I think creative, I'm a really strong routine person, and I like to work every day of the week, during the day, as if I was doing a job. I also think that I work during the day, and I'm strongest in the morning because the work is really physical, like mixing concrete or casting. But as for the thoughts of the work, this can come at any time of the day, the weekends. So I try and keep a sketchbook when I'm going about my day, and then I also think about the titles of my work when I might be driving in the car. So I try and take notes if need be, or memorize those titles when they come to me. I have a natural affinity when I select materials with building and DIY materials. I think it's probably because my method's constructive, but also it's a sense of building down. So I like the idea of using DIY materials because I can build with them. So I can use things like bricks and concrete, where that allows me to build with inanimate forms. I often use silicone, jessamite and clay for maquettes. So I really like the idea of having a multi-material dimension to my work. But I think the consistent materials that I re-engage with are concrete, wood and steel. The works often create and are created through some form of fragmented narratives which explore parts of the human condition in particular fragility, our ambiguities, or even the absurdity of our lives. So I've made these rhythmic, morphic forms with these concrete spirals sitting on top of chairs and also coming out of chairs, which again suggests that sense of an anamorphic sense of an expression of someone sitting on a chair, and it might be their inner world that's being expressed on that chair, where there's one concrete that's knotted up, which potentially senses a sense of anxiety, and then another one that's actually spilling out of the chair, which seems a lot more frivolous and playful. And sometimes I like to think of that work as a sense of desire projecting a need or a want out into the world, rather than having a sense of a knotted interior world. And sometimes the work can take up to 6 months from the beginning of the initiation of the idea to the inception to the completion, particularly with the large works like the sculptural hands. Those took at least 6 months. I'd also like to talk about the hands, which I actually made in lockdown. And I think it's interesting to talk about hands in lockdown because we weren't able to really touch anything. And I think as sculptors, the importance of that tactility, particularly for when we weren't allowed to do it, actually was more important than ever before. And a lot of sculptors really looked at the importance of touch throughout that time. So there's a sense of horror but also humour in them, where they're white and they're wrapped round, so they're bound, so it's as if they're contained but not, but taking over the space. Art for me means having the freedom to express myself fully, and it really has enabled me to do that, particularly accessing inner worlds and having the opportunity to explore not only my inner worlds but the experience of art, experiences of what has happened in the world, politics, particularly the uncertainties of our age.